ready to experience Regina once again? Twice in a span of 3 weeks, everybody's dream. As we welcome you to First and Now, brought to you by World Vision Canada, national charity partner of the BC Lions. Visit bclions.com/worldvision to become a supporter. Special announcement once again, Bo Lacumbo, our nominee for the Jake Godar Veterans Award, has donated $200 to World Vision for every Lion sack for the rest of the year, the last few weeks, currently at $1,200. And there you go. D-Line is going to need to eat in Saskatchewan this Saturday as we bring you the Western semi-final edition. And Nikki, you've got your World Vision hat. Thanks for the reminder. I left mine at home, but we'll aim to bring it next week.
Yeah, for those watching, got the gritty hat on. I got my playoff beard going too. It's nice. It's filling in a little bit here. It's gonna get nice and long, hopefully. But it's that time of the year, right? Gritty football, going to hit the prairies. So I'm looking at you, Mr. Standback, looking at our gloveless defensive ends, Sione Tuihama, Pete Robertson, Riley Pickett. All the Sasky boys are gonna have to play some gritty football up here, and we love it.
It's an unsung hero type of game for me. BC Lions on tap. We've talked a bit about Stanley Berryhill, maybe a guy like that. Looks like Javon Catoy is going to be back. Really the only change in the starting offense, we think, from the win over Montreal. And you wanted to talk about a what-if thought to start this off, did you not?
Yeah, because we obviously missed the last week with the bye week, and we haven't really talked about the Montreal game. Obviously, a big 27-3 win to kick off to close out the regular season. But it kind of hit me that we've kind of told this narrative on social media about the fact that the offense just looked to be having more fun, right?
Yeah.
And Vernon Adams Jr. admitted in his post-game press conference that, I brought the offense together and told him that we used to have more fun. And it kind of hit me that, I remember in Touchdown Pacific, there was that TJ Lee speech we talked a lot about where he said, TJ's words were, what if we didn't play with any doubt in ourselves? The sky's the limit. Let's come here, take care of business, have an undefeated mindset. And that's what Vernon's speech was about in a different aspect of things, was what if we just have fun? Like, what if that's all it took to getting the swagger back, just like Touchdown Pacific, where you saw this team roll the Ottawa Redblacks. So going into the postseason, I mean, there's got to be a lot of confidence. Vernon Adams Jr. is the guy again. I earned the right to start this game. And I mean, like, the ceiling's high. We've always talked about this team.
Well, and Touchdown Pacific is the epitome of that, where, it might take a change in intensity, a little bit more desperation, a change of scenery in that case. And that was virtually a mistake-free game. I think Ottawa executed a fake punt in the first half. That might have been the only, there was no penalties to extend drives for the opposition, and that carries over going into Montreal the next week, beating the team that still finished with the best record in the CFL. So, yeah, Vernon Adams Jr. Will get his start again behind center. And, everyone in the offense in particular referencing that this is still Vernon's team without throwing any disrespect to Nathan Rourke. And Nathan's still a very good teammate. Was with those guys at the Canuck game the other night, and Nathan was the one who was the most fired up. So that again, Rick Campbell said it from day one that the Nathan Rourke signing wasn't going to happen unless Vernon Adams Jr. is on board with it. But you're seeing the fruits of that labor now.
Yeah, and over the bye week, we conducted a series of interviews for our Arrow Up series that's going to be airing after the season concludes. And guys were on record saying, like, this is Vernon's team. He's the leader of this team. And I actually straight up asked Vernon last week. I said, a guy like TJ Lee, like, Vernon will say TJ's the leader of this team. But Vernon, I prompted Vernon saying, TJ says you're the leader of this team. And Vernon it was a great answer. He kind of just thought about it, and he was like, yeah, like, TJ's the vet here, longest serving line, but he's right. Like, this is my team. Like, I put in all my effort. I got these guys together the last 2 years in the offseason to get ahead of the game on his own dime too, right? And Vernon sacrificed everything in his body, everything that he has to put his all into this Lions organization. And it's going to be quite a story if he can, get the job done here in the postseason.
Will it ever? Just add it all up to the roller coaster that has been 2024. Javon Catoy, we talked about him. Adrian Green, the other starter going to the defense now, set to return. Would expect those to be the only two changes. Likely have Kieran Poissant, Charlie Ringland head back to the practice roster. And why don't we hear from Rick Campbell now? We We have some media availability after the Lions' first practice of the week, addressing some of those injured guys and addressing just the overall vibe of the team after a mini bye week and getting ready for elimination season.
Week 2, day 1, just what's the mood like of the group?
Excited. This is what you put in all this work for is the playoffs. So everybody's excited. We just need to make sure we have good days each day and work on solving issues, solving problems that come up in practice. But I like our approach today.
VA had some throws you wanted back, which is generally a good sign for you guys when day 1 doesn't go according to plan for him?
Yeah, I thought we did some good stuff on both sides. I guess when I'm alluding to solving problems is I thought our defense did some really good things, and then our offense had a few good plays too, so it's definitely going to cause some discussions, and that's just ones going versus ones. So those are good things that we'll take a look at in the meetings.
He's totally healthy, including Katoy back. I know he practiced a bit last week too. What does he bring?
Yeah, just, he's the guy that can do so many different things from a receiver point of view or blocking or all those things. So we actually had every single person practicing today, which I don't know the last time that happened. So it's good to have all hands on deck.
Turnovers. Last thing for me is just turnovers. I mean, They've really defined the games in this series, and they're plus 26. They lead the league. How critical is it that you avoid those?
Critical. We need to do a good job. We talked about walking the walk, of not just talking about it, it's about in practice, of making sure we're securing the ball on offense and making sure the defense we're trying to get the ball out. And obviously Saskatchewan's really good at it, but any playoff game, the turnovers are going to be a big factor in it. So definitely a point of emphasis for us.
When you have looked at the film on playing them, obviously week 6 is a lot different than week 19. What do you think will be the difference come Saturday?
I think what we just talked about too, there's a lot of things, but the turnovers is a big thing, is we need to take care of the football when we've got it. Is, we spotted them 7 points on the second play of the game. That makes it tougher. So they do a good job. I think they're a good all-around team. They don't really have any weak spots. They're good offense, defense, special teams. That I know that we've shown that too, and so we're looking to make sure we show up that way come Saturday.
Do you see the game against Montreal, your regular season finale, as being a true indicator of the way that this football team can play, or do you look at the way that they...
I look at our whole body of work. Like I said, it hasn't been how we've necessarily drawn it up coming out of training camp, but we've had some really good games and some games we'd like to play better, and obviously want to make sure it's on the side of playing good football. And I know we're just looking forward to playing.
Excellent stuff with Rick Campbell, and a big storyline in this game as well. We've talked about the offense, what they need to do, have to avoid those turnovers. Saskatchewan plus 26. Amazingly, they had 6 takeaways, and we were just there a few weeks ago. But it's on the defense to make those plays as well, and we have some audio of Garry Peters talking about the whole mindset and the importance of taking the ball away, making things easier, shorter fields for the offense.
We were just talking about turnovers, how big they're going to be on Saturday. How do you see Saturday?
Oh, same way. Playoff is momentum, and everything matters in the playoffs. So for us, whether we're walking around the facility and somebody got a water bottle in their hand, we're trying to punch it out. Or in the meetings, we're breaking it down on turnover. So for us on defense, that's super important for us, and we want to capitalize on that. The more we can get the offense the ball, the better it's going to be in the playoff game where every possession matters.
How much did the Montreal game mean to this team, Garry, heading into the playoffs the way that you played?
It's just momentum. At the end of the day, it is what it is. You got 18 games to kind of prepare for the playoffs. So, that was another dress rehearsal, but it doesn't really mean nothing going into this game. It's a new season in itself, and everybody needs to lock in and be on another level this week.
How much of a lift do you guys get when the offense is playing well? Does it get you guys up as well?
Definitely, it's big time. Anytime we get to sit on the sideline, and rest, it's always big, and it's always helpful for our defense. We don't mind playing 30, 45 plays a game, and when we do play 45 to 50 plays, it's usually in our favor. We usually end up winning. So for us, the more the offense keep the ball and be on the field, it only helps us out even more.
2 players I want to ask you about. Trevor Harris, since he's come back from injury, he's been as good as any quarterback in the league. What makes him dangerous?
Super smart, very high IQ. He knows where to go with the ball right now. He knows what the defense like to do. He knows how to read the secondary. If you're looking like you're staring in the backfield, take his hand off the ball, throw the fade ball right over your head. He sees things very quick. You dropping out of there, he's kind of getting the ball out of his hands, throwing it right now. So for him, I've always had respect for him in his game, even when he was back in Ottawa. So he's always been a great player, very high IQ, and super smart.
Sam Emilus has had some success against you guys as well. Just what does he do well?
Real fiery guy, for them, crafty, can run every route, and he's only gotten better, as he's grown in the CFL. You can see that his confidence is real high right now. He's playing at a high level, and he's got that physical mentality of I'll run through you, I'll block you, I'll do whatever you need to do to win the game. You see him coming in and digging out a D lineman, and then you see him going deep on a deep pass. So for them, that's one of the main guys, I'm proud of where he's came this season or in the last couple of years, but for us, mentality is we got to go in and stop that.
Yeah, that's it. Have to play with that swagger as well, right? And, Garry Peters, maybe a bit of surprise. He didn't earn another all-CFL selection, but he has bigger things in mind. This team has bigger things in mind. And these veterans, it's going to be on them to set the tone. Yeah,
you said it on that note of the all-CFL selections. I think for keeping it real, a pretty dang good list overall. The media and the voters did a great job, I would say, with Justin McInnes, Sean White being the two representatives. But if there's one snub that I was looking at, and this is going to be no surprise hearing it from this podcast, you know where I'm going. Got to be Garry Peters, right? A true lockdown corner still. He just doesn't obviously have the stats to back it up, because ask the other 8 starting quarterbacks in this league. They avoid Garry Peters for a reason.
It's the old Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom thing where they weren't throwing to Richard Sherman, so he wasn't showing up as much in the box score, right? That's exactly it, right? But hey, if it's more fuel for Garry Peters, all the power to him. 2 of them, we talked about it, McInnes and White, 9 for Saskatchewan. So yeah, we're going up against the all-CFL Western All-Stars here on Saturday.
They got some studs over there, right? They probably have in my opinion, they should have the MOP nominee and maybe the actual winner of the award in Roland Milligan, right? So, yeah. We'll get into that in a sec here, but a lot of talent out in Saskatchewan.
All right, third place Lions looking to keep their season going, a win, and they would head to Winnipeg for the Western Final 1 week from Saturday. And we're not going to get into the Mother Nature, how Mother Nature kind of played a role in this whole playoff bracket in the West. But boy, oh boy, was that you and I were texting throughout that Bombers Montreal game. But credit to the Bombers. That's what good battle-tested teams do. They take advantage of those opportunities. But the Lions looking to follow the similar path to 1994. You all remember 30 years ago, started in Edmonton, went on to Calgary. 2 big upsets, McManus to Flutie in the snow. And that led them back to BC Place for a Grey Cup upset of the Baltimore Stallions, or the Baltimore CFLers as they were known during that week. Check out our Grey Cup recaps, by the way, if you subscribe to this podcast. We did that earlier this year. We recap each of the 6 championships in great detail. But Giulio Caravatta, Nikki, was part of that team, and we spoke to Giulio about some of the keys to this game and following that same path. He has a great story to tell about a late season game that sort of made them believe that year. But we talked to Giulio starting off about his induction to the BC Football Hall of Fame. And it is our great pleasure to welcome in BC Football Hall of Fame inductee Giulio Caravatta. It's not every day we get a Hall of Famer on this, Giulio, so we're honored here.
Well, thank you very much. That's very nice of you.
Let's hit on that just quickly. Seeing the pictures, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get up there as I was involved in pregame duties with work here, but is it the type of thing that it sinks in once you actually get there and you have everyone around you?
Yeah, obviously for me, I was very honored, very humbled. It's not something I ever expected. I think for me personally, I think what the best part was is just to see my family's reaction. My mother came out, who's 90, from Toronto with my sisters and nephew, and having my wife and my girls there was a huge thrill. So, it was a fantastic afternoon, something I'll never forget. And as I said, it was really humbling.
Very well earned. On to Regina, back to Saskatchewan. It's only been 3 weeks, I guess, but we're going back, West semifinal. What's one key area you're zoning in on for this game?
Well, I think obviously anytime you play in the playoffs, it's always going to be, you always talk about the line of scrimmage, right? You're talking about their the ability to protect the passer, and then the other part of it is how you can get to the passer. So for me, that is always going to be the key, is the line of scrimmage, and who wins the line of scrimmage is going to be the team that wins.
And no disrespect to who was here before, but do you get the sense William Stanback brings an element to this offense that maybe was lacking a bit the last 2 playoff years outside?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. He is going to be a big factor in this game. There's just no question. So, and I think this is exactly why they brought him here, was to have him, for those late times in these games when you can, grind out a team. It doesn't look like the weather is going to be a factor. It looks like it's going to be pretty good. But another big one for me too, Bakes, is going to be Vernon, right? Like, obviously the quarterbacks are both going to, be integral parts in all this. But, the way that he played in that finale against Montreal, the way he was able to use his feet, if he's able to do that, they're a very good defensive front, right? That's been their MO all year. They're going to get after the quarterback. But anytime you play somebody with mobility, you add an element to, how you defend that person. And, we've seen it when he is able to break down a defense by getting outside the pocket and then creating time for himself and being able to hit big plays downfield. That's the difference between him and a lot of quarterbacks.
Without, we already talked about Vernon and Will, but I'm gonna rephrase this not as like the cliche X factor question, but maybe on one side of the ball for the Lions and even the Riders too. Who are some players you're looking for to be difference makers in order to propel their teams to win this game?
That's a really good question. And I always put a little bit of thought into this because I agree with you. This time of the year, you're always looking for that person who no one really kind of expects to kind of step up. I think the Lions, one of the things that they're going to have to be able to do is they need some big strike capability. You got to get big plays, right? You can't, against a defense like Saskatchewan, you can't figure that you're gonna have 8 plays for 85 yards all the time, right? It's just too hard. So you need those explosive plays. I look at a guy like Stanley Berryhill as maybe a little bit of an X factor, a guy that has got tremendous speed, that can, that I think quietly, I think everybody who looks at this Lions offense looks at Alexander Hollins as that big play guy, but I think Stanley Berryhill can be one of those guys that can really create some problems, and hopefully they give him that opportunity because I really like him. I think he's got great speed, and it would be nice to see him, be that X factor.
Giulio, one of the unique kind of themes about this week too is that 30 years ago in 1994, a BC Lions team had to go on the road to come back home. And they did that route. You were a part of that team. What's maybe one takeaway that you think allowed the team to, go into Edmonton, go into Calgary, slay those Dragons and come back and ultimately get it done in the Grey Cup at home?
Again, an excellent question, Nick. It's funny you say that because, again, I've put some thought into this because it does have a lot of similarities. And I'll just relate it to the end of 1994, we played our final home game against the Calgary Stampeders. And up until that point, Calgary had really throttled us every single game, like not even close. That particular game we lost, but we played them very, very competitively. And I think we ended up losing by a point or 2 points. And in the locker room, I can remember guys saying, like, we can beat those guys. There was I think there was a mentality that, that we were tired of losing to them and we weren't going to do it anymore. And I think that psychologically, I think put us on the right path. And it, obviously took us through Edmonton and then obviously onward to Calgary, where we upset, arguably one of the best teams in CFL history. But I see a lot of similarities here because I think that the Lions have had their backs up against the wall. They've kind of been taking a lot of shots from people that, they're not that good and blah, 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 blah. But I think that final game has really injected a real positive energy into this team. And I think that they believe, and I think, I'm one too, that I think they have the potential here to really make some noise in this playoffs and really replicate what happened 30 years ago. It'd be a hell of a story, but they have the capability. And I think that's one of the things too about this team, that X factor is that everybody knows they have the talent, right? They have the players to make the plays. It's just there's been a level of inconsistency throughout the year, but if they can get over that and start to play with confidence, and I think that's why early on, if they can get off to a great start, that if they get that level of confidence where they start to believe in one another, I think they really can make some noise.
very quickly. Darren Flutie, I talked to him when he went into the Lions Wall of Fame. He had a great story about that last game against Calgary. Doug Flutie, his brother, of course, and the Stampeders were going out and picking their Grey Cup seats for their families.
That's right.
So
Buying tickets.
Fuel to the fire. So we're looking to follow the same path here as always, and we always appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks. Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
And that's a great one. Almost knocking off Calgary in what was a meaningless game at the end of the regular season. Maybe that's a parallel, galvanizing a big win against Montreal.
Yeah, some crazy parallels, obviously, with the 1994 season, 30 years ago, too, which makes it kind of even sweeter that if the Lions team is to repeat this story, it'd be pretty incredible. But I think the theme of this week, and Giulio brought it up, Jalen Edwards-Cooper brought it up yesterday on Tap, so did Moj, but like the undefeated mindset, the championship mindset, not thinking we're going to go do this, knowing we're going to go do this, right? And by doing this, I mean going on the road to these two prairie cities and then earning our road back home and getting it done in the Grey Cup in front of our home crowd. So that's what's at stake. And these fans are saying, oh, it's impossible. They got to beat Saskatchewan. They got to beat Winnipeg. They got to go on the road. It's been done. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
So such a unique thing about this organization. And yeah, history repeats itself, perhaps.
Hope so. We're going to talk to Jamie Nye in a couple minutes. Jamie, co-host of the Green Zone radio show in Regina. And but just kind of teeing up some more elements of this matchup. We've talked about that loss in Saskatchewan 3 weeks ago that assured the Lions they would finish no higher than third. 1-1 in the season series. Remember, that Week 6 game at BC Place, the Riders were undefeated, and that was a result where the Lions were like, well, might have to win this game to keep first place on our minds. It turns out it's a second and third matchup here, but Justin McInnis was a monster that night, 362 yards alone. I think Vernon went over 400, 451. Special teams was huge. Sean White had the 7 field goals. That was a complete team effort, and it's going to take one of those here on Saturday, Nick.
Yeah, it was 362 from McInnis combined in those two games, which is just an outstanding number. But it was 243 that he had in that one game. Yeah, I knew that
seemed kind of high, yeah.
Yeah, 243 on 14 receptions, which is still just a ridiculous stat line. VA obviously in a role that game. Alexander Hollinsworth was deep shots too, and I remember we were talking about this back then in July about just the blocking. That was the difference, right? You need time to operate against the Saskatchewan defense, because if you don't have time, they're going to force you into these takeaways that they just feast on. And I think looking back at that final drive in Week 6, there were 2 plays where the Riders bring 6, CJ Avery comes in this A-gap, and William Stanback takes him out, blocks him as the extra blocker with the 5-0 lineman, and VA allows to hit him to a 47-yard pass to Hollins. And we've talked about how important it is to get Alex Hollins, Stanley Berryhill, these guys open deep. So that's an example right there where, it's going to take that extra half second, that extra second, Vernon understanding his assignment, which he obviously will, but that's what's going to take to avoid these turnovers that Saskatchewan just feast on. They have a plus 26 turnover ratio this year. That's by far the best in the CFL. This Rider team, they live and die by takeaways. When they get takeaways or when they win that battle, like they did in Week 19, 6-0 against BC, they cruise. But when the turnover battle was 2-2 in that Week 6 game, BC comes out on top, right? They make more plays. So, like you said, Riders, they got 17 points off those 4 first half turnovers in Week 19. Yeah, that can't happen. You can't bury that hole.
Yeah. Neil McAvoy was on with Donnie and Dolly this week, and he pointed that out too. I mean, Justin McInnis fumbles one. That's not going to happen again. We're not counting on that happening again. So, stopping the run. Stop us if you heard this before this time of year. I think AJ Ouellette had like 5.6 per carry or something like that in that result. Kind of a weird situation. Remember, he was on the shelf. They pick up Rock Armstead just days after his release from the Red Blacks. He sets a record in their win against Calgary, which was their first win in 8 games, I believe. And it appears as though AJ Ouellette's the guy, if you believe some of their social media graphics and the players they're highlighting and their injury report. But Rock Armstead was a full participant. So, the trenches, stopping the run, making Trevor Harris make quick decisions, and his return from injury, the Saskatchewan quarterback, certainly has propelled them to their the final third of the season and securing a home playoff game. These are all important areas.
Yeah, second and long. That's where you have to get this offense, right? Everyone talks about Trevor Harris's wisdom. He's the guy that takes those 3-step drops and gets his ball out exactly where he knows that he has to get it to. But if you get this Riders team in second and long, a situation they actually have been in a lot this season too. They're actually last in the CFL on first down, which I found really interesting this season. But if you get second and longs, that allows for longer dropbacks, not 3 steps, but 5 steps or 7-step dropbacks for Trevor Harris. And that just makes it easier for, Matthew Betts, Sione Tuihama to actually go to work, where I think in week 19, we saw Trevor get in that groove that we've seen him do these last decade or so. And by then, Matthew and Sione have a second to get to Trevor, and that's virtually impossible, right? So that's the key right there. Yeah, stopping the run, second and long.
And we're going to break down a lot of these issues and more coming up with Jamie Nye, host of the Green Zone in Regina. First and now, the official BC Lions podcast presented by World Vision Canada. Off we go to track down one of our favorites. Despite that fact, he's making his first and now debut here. We wanted to wait for a big week and a big moment. Jamie Nye, co-host of the Green Zone in Regina. And yes, a fellow we've seen at a couple Grey Cups years gone past. How are you, sir?
Very well. Nice seeing you two gentlemen once again. Probably a lot earlier in the morning than we usually see each other Grey Cup weeks, but whatever.
Yeah, this is normally around the time we're getting vertical after a late night session in the FRC suite, which, hope we're going to be too busy to hang out in there this year, but you never know. We'll take it one week at a time. As we set the stage for the West semifinal here, first playoff meeting between these two teams since 2013. It's ripe with storylines on both sides, but wanted to sort of get a vibe check from the market. I've seen you posting, among others, on X about ticket sales and a bit of a tough sled right now. What's the vibe in the market here, Jamie?
Well, it's an interesting one. There's a lot of people that are excited about this new rendition of the Rough Riders under the direction of Corey Mace, but it's been a little slow to get the tickets moving for the West semifinal. Last week could have been for first place, and they had the lowest attended game ever at the new Mosaic Stadium with just over 22,000. So it's going to be weird. I think it's going to be a heck of a football game on Saturday between these two teams. I know 39-8 the last time the Lions visited here a few weeks ago, but Vernon Adams Jr. could be a game changer in that, because you go back to earlier in the season, and it was the Lions beating up on the Riders because Vernon Adams and Justin McInnes and everybody had a big day. So I think on one side you had a blowout, on another side you had a blowout. I think that just meets in the middle on Saturday for the West semifinal. There's a lot of excited fans about it, but it'll be interesting to see how many get off their butt and buy a ticket for Saturday's game.
Hey, go back to Saturday. I don't know if you were on the air or if you were in the venue, but can you describe the mood when Winnipeg somehow pulled that out? What was it like for you?
Well, we were doing our pregame show, so it was about an hour or so before kickoff of the Rider game. So it's myself, former Rough Rider Belton Johnson, and of course, you two both know Daryl Davis really well, Football Reporters of Canada, Hall of Famer Daryl Davis. So we were pretty much watching the game and thinking, oh, he missed a 61-yard field goal. Things are getting interesting. We could be playing for first place at Mosaic Stadium. And then, 2-0. And then that wind tornado, as the great Marshall Ferguson, or the leaf tornado, as Marshall Ferguson described it, kicked in. And you go, uh-oh. And then it's a bad punt. And then the field goal goes through, and it just zapped the energy out of Saskatchewan instantaneously. And you saw it. They benched a bunch of starters right before kickoff.
Yeah.
Their game time decisions all sat. And it just looked like even the Rough Riders were like, we're not playing for anything. And it was a big time letdown for the province and the football team. But I think that energy starts to ramp up for this West semifinal, of course.
And Jamie, when it comes to those starters, you mentioned that were rested last week. Who are some of the biggest threats on the Riders offense? Because I know there's the guys like Schaefer Baker that have been there for a couple of years, but there's some newcomers this year that emerged on especially in that receiving corps, right?
Yeah, in that receiving corps, Keyshawn Johnson's the main guy who's really jumped forward. As you know, we were debating, like, if he didn't play NFL games, he would have been almost automatic for possibly Rookie of the Year, although Trevor Reed did a great job at left tackle on the Riders offensive line. So Keyshawn Johnson really jumped out. He had a stretch of 4 straight games with touchdowns. And of course, he jumps off the page. Jareth Stearns has a connection a little more with Trevor Harris. He's a veteran. He's been around, but starting to make a bigger name for himself this season. And then you kind of got that new Canadian Air Force, which everybody now knows with Keon Schaefer Baker. And you also have Sam Emelis up there too. And Del Duncan Busby has been a nice little flash at the start of his career as a rookie in the Canadian Football League. And we'll be interested to see what comes out of the backfield. We know AJ Ouellette. We know Rock Armstead. We're just not sure if they're both on the roster, if they pick one guy yet. We're not sure how Corey Mace is going to settle that going into this week's game.
Mm-hmm. Something that made me smile throughout this season was the love that Roland Milligan got. I love seeing defensive players get this MOP love, everything, right? But typically it's kind of easy to start avoiding cornerbacks, right? Baker and I were talking about the Legion of Boom with Richard Sherman. Teams would literally avoid him. I think Garry Peters kind of gets that treatment here. So how does Roland still make all these plays throughout the rest of the season when teams clearly knew that he was the guy on the Riders defense?
Well, it's all about the way the Riders play their defense, because you can avoid a guy when they play a lot of man. Like Legion of Boom, they come up and stuff guys at the line of scrimmage, and they're manned up all the time. BC Lions do a little bit more of that too, where, okay, it's man over there. When they play, it's every defensive snap is almost zone defense for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So you look at, okay, where is Roland's zone? And Roland Milligan is a ball hawk. So he will read a play and might come out of his zone because of all the film. And he puts in so much film work. They call him one of the hardest working guys. And he'll almost, okay, the quarterback's going here. So he allows himself. There's so many times where you look at the play that he makes and it's him coming out of his zone, reading the play correctly, and being the second guy in to jump in front of the ball. So he's just got that natural playmaker ability on defense. And the one thing I like even more about Roland Milligan is he will lay the smack down in the run defensive game. That's what I appreciate most. A lot of DBs will make business decisions and kind of, okay, going to try to push him out of bounds. Roland Milligan wants to be the hammer on every single play. And that aggressive nature has Corey Mason love with his most outstanding player this season, Roland Milligan Jr.
Hey, speaking of activity at the line, does that unit on defense for Saskatchewan maybe fly a little under the radar? Like, we still see Micah Johnson making plays and Anthony Lanier. How key are they to this whole scenario?
Well, you look at that defensive line, and that's where Corey Mace has made his career. You look at every defense he was involved in, whether it's the Calgary Stampeders or the Toronto Argonauts, and now the Rough Riders. That's where it begins for everything. You have that line forcing the quarterback to make a quick read and Roland Milligan making a play. So that defensive line is under the radar because defensive lines all across the league are under the radar this year because you don't have that big sack guy who's got 15, 16 sacks. But Malik Carney's all over the place. He's drawing back in the lineup likely. You have Brian Cox Jr., Hall of Fame father, got that defensive DNA in him, but Micah Johnson, Caleb Saunders, and Miles Brown as well as defensive tackles have flown under the radar. This is, as you said, a very, I think, underrated defensive line that they come at you everywhere and they all share in just the disruptions. That's what they want. Don't worry about the sacks, pressures, all that stuff. They want to disrupt the pocket, and they've been able to do that for much of the season.
Outside of VA, who we've talked about a bit here, if you're a Sask fan or coach, player, what have you, who you fearing on the other side, what would you be zeroing in on in terms of who they have to neutralize?
Well, if you go back to, sorry, I'm looking at the schedule. July 13th.
July 13th. Yeah.
Was that a Friday night too? Yeah, it was. No, it was Saturday.
No, it was Saturday. I think it was one of our Saturday 4:00 specials, watermelon smash thing. Yeah. Yes.
So Justin McInnes is the answer to that question.
Yes.
Because of what he did damage-wise with that zone defense. And he and Vernon Adams Jr. absolutely lit up the Rough Riders. But, a game as the sun dips below the prairie horizon on Saturday, it's going to start to get a little more chilly around Mosaic Stadium in that second half. And you got to believe William Stanback is going to be a big part to wear down that Riders defense. So those are the two. Outside of Vernon Adams Jr., of course, those are the two. And the Riders have been very good against the run. They've been very good against the run. So I think it's more of that receiving core. And then, I'm just Keon Hatcher and Hollins. Like, if you can't double team McInnes, because those guys are going to get you too. So it's going to be. And
remember, there was no Hatcher in that July game.
No,
either.
There wasn't.
So, yeah.
So they'll come at you in waves, those BC Lions, that's for sure.
So Jamie, love bringing this question out come playoff time. On Saturday night, the Saskatchewan Roughriders will have advanced to the Western Final if, and then I'll flip that question on the opposite side, the BC Lions will have advanced to the Western Final if. Where do you see those two answers coming from?
I think the Roughriders advance to the West West Final if they are able to take the ball away from Vernon Adams Jr. Mm-hmm. If they force him into some bad decisions, and we see a quarterback with a couple of turnovers that way. And that's where about the Riders defense. They've owned the giveaway takeaway battle. Like, you look at the numbers and they're plus 20 something stupid. Like, that's going to be their bread and butter. Can they take the ball away from the BC Lions? For the Lions, as much as I mentioned William Stanback, if they can get more diversity in their offense and eat up some clock, make Trevor Harris, who's one of the hottest quarterbacks right now in the CFL, chill out on the sidelines on Saturday afternoon and dictate the play a little bit and sustain some drives and quiet a Mosaic Stadium crowd, that's going to be a big difference for me. I think William Stanback has to be a big part of their game plan. And it can be, pass to run too. It doesn't have to just be run plays, because William Stanback can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. Although there was the one start to the Rider game a few weeks ago where he wished he had that one back.
Yeah, that ball's still bouncing around off some.
What was that, 9 bounces? That was one of the craziest plays of the CFL season outside of the Leaf tornado last week.
Yeah,
those are 1-2.
Yeah, that's it, right? I mean, and that's a big key for the Lions. Self-inflicted wounds. Bad plays are going to happen. Have to bounce back from them, and don't let the adversity creep in. And I'm with you. Yeah, if they pull this out, you're going to be talking about again the continuation of VA and a guy like William Stanback taking pressure off the passing game. So, hey, plenty of great elements in this matchup. We're only halfway through the week here. I know it's the topic du jour every day for you, along with Elias Pettersson's struggles with the Canucks. Although I was in the building Saturday when he scored, Jamie. So
okay,
I just have to get. Time. I just got to get to more games, get him going. So
everybody knows I'm a Canuck fan out there because
we do. Yeah,
I lit. That's my NHL team, and man, I am frustrated with number 40.
Yeah. Well, it's just add it to the list over the years. But anyway, there'll be lots of time to talk hockey, but we're all about football, obviously. And hey, no matter what the outcome is, I'm sure we'll see you in a couple weeks' time, my friend.
I'm there. Flights are booked. Hotels booked. Can't wait for what you guys have in store for a Grey Cup party. Whether or not one of these two teams, I'd love to have one of these two teams be in the Grey Cup. Nothing against Winnipeg, but I've covered them enough in Grey Cups. I
wasn't gonna say it, but if it's not us, we hope it's. There you go. We can say that, right?
I think everybody else is on the same page. Yeah.
Okay, my friend. Make sure there's lots of beer.
Yes, I'll make sure that's covered in the FRC suite this year.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. See you at Grey Cup week.
Yeah. See you guys.
What an excellent breakdown with Jamie Nye, a longtime host of the Green Zone on 980 CJME. Hey, they have a 982 radio station in Regina. Excellent. And he hit on all the points, and I'll say it, right? You know, everyone points to VA and McInnes, but if you can be diverse on offense, that'll be big. So
100%, yeah. And the Riders have a stout run defense too, right? So it's no easy task. So if Will Stanback is able to break through that first level, get maybe triple-digit yardage kind of thing, yeah, that'd be huge. And I love how, you know, there is this kind of new Canadian Air Force kind of upbringing in Saskatchewan, you know, the MLS, Schaefer Baker, Ajo, who's now injured, Duncan Busby, obviously. But that's my last key to this, is that there's a guy on each team, and Justin McInnes and Samuel Amelis, they will tell you that they're both the best Canadian receiver in the CFL. McInnes definitely felt some type of way in week 6 when he put up 243. Amelis and Garry Peters and all these DBs have all these battles. So those guys will tell you they're the best Canadian. They got to be the best Canadian, right? Amelis had 16 for 255 against BC this year. McInnes 20 for 362, like you said. Both play that same spot. They got to be the best. And one other note too, Keelan Hatcher, he's Mr. November, right? I think people are kind of forgetting about this.
Yeah.
He's back.
Was it the third highest total in a playoff game last year?
Yeah. And he led 2022 in CFL in playoff yards. So,
yeah.
This before his Achilles injury, obviously, but he's Mr. November.
Nothing but storylines for Hatch and the Lions and the Riders. 980 CKNW, speaking of that, pregame show 2:30 Saturday. Rob Fay will be on the broadcast with us in Saskatchewan. Punjabi fellas, Hart Pander, Gurpreet Gill filling in for Tak Deer, who's on Hockey Night in Canada duty, I believe, as I just accidentally bumped the table. Hopefully we're still good technically, but Punjabi Radio AM 600 pregame at 3 o'clock Pacific. Red Blacks at Toronto in the Eastern Semi. The Red Blacks season kind of mirroring ours. They stubbed their toe a couple times down the stretch, fall to third place, but the Argos deserve credit. Despite being swept by last place Hamilton, they end up in second place, and you don't want to read anything too into what's happened lately, because remember Toronto last year, of course, at 16-2, turned the ball over quite a bit, and it cost them against Montreal. But the Argonauts are looking like a pretty complete team right now themselves, but I'm interested to see how Ottawa responds to this opportunity.
Yeah, anything can happen, right? Ottawa's kind of venturing into the postseason for the first time in a couple of years. This core is hitting the first playoff game, but I mean, it's got to be advantage Toronto on paper, right? I kind of just caught up on I was behind on the Argos games, and I watched their Montreal game the other week, and I watched the Edmonton game last night. And man, like I was all year I was kind of like teetering between Kadeem Carey and Walter Fletcher for the East running back, all CFL. But Kadeem Carey, man, that guy he's
very
something
good.
else. Yeah, so he's going to be a big factor in that game. I was watching the Edmonton game last week. DeMonte Coxey, arguably their best receiver, got injured last week. Hurt his knee, and he was a DNP on Tuesday. So that's bad news for them. But the thing about the Argos is it seems like they have like 10 receivers that can just step in and play. Like guys like Dejon Brissett, Mackay Polk was another outstanding guy. So they're loaded there. Chad Kelly's in a role. This O-line is still stout. That front is great. So I lean
very good on both sides of the line of scrimmage.
I lean
Toronto.
advantage Toronto, but anything can happen.
Absolutely, it can. And talking about attendance in Saskatchewan, I would hope the Argos get a decent uptick in ticket sales here based on their second half rally and you know, every time we go to BMO Field, I love it there. The people who do show up, you have to focus on them. You got to stop harping on those who don't. And I'm sure whenever a new commissioner comes in, he'll get asked the question, how do you fix Toronto? Well, I don't know how much it needs, right? Other than maybe getting a couple more thousand a game in there. And attendance is up in Toronto and pretty much everywhere else. So props to the Argos fans, and I'm sure that game, it's always kind of a cool dynamic in the Western playoffs. You'll have that first game, that Eastern game on the TVs in the locker room, surely, and it's going to be fun. So noon Pacific, and then 3:30 Pacific, Lions at Saskatchewan, capping off the doubleheader. If I were to go for something else here, I would go for Saturday playoffs. Love the Saturday playoffs. So
Get an extra day too. That's what I like afterwards to prepare for the next week and the next week. So love it too.
All right, what are you going for here as we get into it for real?
Did you watch NFL on Sunday?
Yes. was a range of emotions watching that Niners-Cowboys game. I was convinced they were going to blow another one and watched pretty much all of the Seahawks game. I had a birthday party at a pub where I got to watch the second half of the Seahawks-Bills. So, yes, that's my long answer. I watched NFL
the 10
on
a.m.
Sunday.
slate, though, because
not as much.
So Red Zone, that's the channel where you see all the NFL games at once and they just cut to the highlights. There's a thing called the witching hour, and that's what I'm going for this week, because that witching hour on Sunday was incredible. And what it is, it's the last hour of the first slate, so that's when there's the most games, and it's just chaos. And it felt like every game had just chaos, like the Jets and the Patriots. Not a sexy game on paper, but that game went down to the wire. Colts Texans was everywhere.
Cleveland Baltimore.
Yeah, Cleveland Baltimore. It was just every single game. Packers and Jaguars had this late kind of surge from Jacksonville. So it was a great slate, and it's kind of why I've always believed that you got to go to CFL games, and I think it's because they're isolated. You get to experience that game and live in it. Whereas I love watching NFL games at home. That's my preference because there's so much going on.
It was made for television.
Yeah, and channels like Red Zone and the Witching Hour just make it so much elevated. And a little bonus one too. Shout out Canadians Chase and Sidney Brown. They're brothers. They both got drafted to Cincinnati and Philadelphia. They played against each other on Sunday. Really cool story. So shout out them.
And that was another game. All was close until the fourth quarter. But yeah, the Eagles not quite dead yet, apparently. This NFC could pretty much be wide open. So still half a regular season to go. A lot can happen.
It's the Lions to lose.
Yeah.
BC Lions.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't want to face Detroit right now, but they're still Detroit after all. You never know. All right, in honor of it being Halloween, yeah, it'd be scary having to go into Ford Field probably, but I can't get enough of the caramel bars.
Okay.
So good.
The little ones?
Yeah, well, the big ones too, but the Halloween-sized ones I'll go for too. So I'll be scanning my daughter's candy bowl with excitement to see how many caramels I can snatch. Love Halloween overall. I'd go for Halloween.
That's a great one. You want to double up here?
Sure. All right. I know the Toronto folks think that the world revolves around them, talking about sports, but do we have to hear the nonstop complaining every time Teoscar Hernandez makes a big play for the Dodgers?
Former Blue Jay.
They traded him to Seattle, so he's been on Seattle in between too, right?
Yes.
So now I get it. Fans of every team do this. Remember that year Pittsburgh won the Stanley Cup and they had Nick Bonino scoring goals?
Mm-hmm.
Canucks Twitter was just a disaster when that was happening. But yeah, move on.
Yeah, I hear you.
And go Dodgers.
Yeah, they got their butts kicked last night. We were watching that during on tap. That was crazy.
Yeah,
so, still alive there, hey?
Still alive.
So
it's never over till it's over.
My punt this week. Love Moj. Nothing but good things to say
about
Moj.
We all love him.
But this was something that transpired during our bye week. So I haven't got to talk about this. We talked about it at BC Place though, and I think most people are on my side here. So I'm in Moj's Fantasy Football League. It's great. Good high stakes league. I got a good team. But there is the waiver wire pickup. I'm punting this because so the situation was 2 weeks ago, I had two quarterbacks, Justin Fields and Dak Prescott. The Cowboys are on a bye, so I lose Dak, obviously, but I have Justin Fields, right? But on Wednesday, day one of practice for the Pittsburgh, they announced that Russell Wilson is now Pittsburgh's quarterback. No problem, right? Just go pick up a quarterback. That's
what I would do.
The problem with Moj's league is that Tuesday is the waiver wire, and after that, you cannot pick up anybody for the rest of the
year. I've never heard of that.
So I had no quarterback. I couldn't do anything. I had Justin Fields and Dak, and Moj said,
"Sorry, Moj, we're sending in the punt team here, big time."
This has a good ending though. So we talked it out. I did Moj a favor, and he hit me back with he changed it to Wednesday. So there's a bit of a compromise there. And my compromise was, well, if I'm gonna pick up all the quarterbacks, I picked up Bo Nix last week, started him, he lit up the Carolina Panthers. So happy ending for all involved. But I was livid.
Tough.
We had a good argument at the October 19th game about those rules, and I was involving you, Liam, everybody, getting you guys on my side. But that was crazy. But it's all resolved, so we're all good.
Again, I never heard of that. So there you go, another edition in the books, and that brings the episode to a conclusion. Lions, Rough Riders, keep it locked to BC Lions YouTube website. We have all the content. We got some bonus trailers this week. We won't spoil who's involved, but
1994
Lion fans of all Lions vintages should love this one. So, but buckle up. Let's go. This is the time we live
Playoff time.
for.
We're getting gritty. Let's go.
And we'll be back next week, hopefully, talking about a win and previewing another game. First and Now, the official BC Lions podcast.